On May 18th at my son's charity gala, my daughter-in-law called me a big fool in front of 300 people. I'm Mary Sullivan. I'm 63 years old. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't cause a scene. I stood there in my $89 silver dress from Macy's holding my auction paddle, and I smiled. Then I decided to teach them exactly who this fool really was. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really started, because you can't understand what happened that night without understanding everything that came before. My name is Mary Elizabeth Sullivan. I was born in Seattle's Central District in 1963, back when it was still the heart of Black Seattle. My parents worked at Boeing, my father on the assembly line, my mother in the cafeteria. We didn't have much, but we had enough. We had love. We had pride. We had each other. I married young. Too young, probably. I was 22 when I met Thomas Sullivan at a community college class. He was white, studying business administration. I was taking accounting courses at night while working as a receptionist during the day. This was 1985, and interracial couples still turned heads in Seattle, but we didn't care. We were young and in love, and certain we could build something beautiful together. We had David when I was 27, beautiful baby boy with my eyes and Thomas's smile. For 7 years we were a family, not perfect, but ours. Then one Tuesday morning in 1992, Thomas packed his bags while David was at school and I was at work. He left a note on our kitchen table, 6 words that changed everything. I can't do this anymore. No forwarding address, no phone number, no child support checks that ever arrived. I was 29 years old, a Black single mother with a 7-year-old son, a mortgage I could barely afford, and an administrative assistant salary of $24,000 a year at a small nonprofit called Hearts and Hope Foundation. Most people expected me to fall apart. My mother called every week, "Baby, just come home. Let me help you with David. You can't do this alone." But I didn't fall apart. I couldn't afford to. David needed stability. He needed to believe his mother had everything under control, even when that mother was crying in the bathroom at 2 a.m. terrified about next month's electric bill. So I worked. During the day, I kept my job at Hearts and Hope Foundation, an organization that provided resources for low-income families, food assistance, job training, childcare support. The work meant something to me because I understood those families. I was one of those families. At night after David went to bed, I took online courses, business administration, nonprofit management, grant writing. I'd study until midnight sometimes later, teaching myself skills that might help me move up, earn more, provide better. On weekends, I took freelance grant writing jobs. $50 here, $100 there. Every penny went into David's college fund or toward the mortgage or toward bills that never stopped coming. Those were hard years. So hard that sometimes I'd sit at my kitchen table late at night surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups and wonder if I was doing enough. If David would remember these years as poverty or as love. If working so much made me a bad mother or a good provider. But I never let David see my doubts. "We have everything we need, Mom," he told me once when he was 10. We were making spaghetti for dinner, our Tuesday night tradition. You and me, that's everything. I cried in the bathroom after he went to bed that night. Happy tears, grateful tears. By the time David started high school, things had gotten better. I'd been promoted to development coordinator at Hearts and Hope. My salary had doubled to $48,000. We could afford small luxuries, now dinner out once a month, new clothes instead of thrift store, finds a real vacation every few years. I'd also gotten good at grant writing. Really good. I was helping larger organizations secure funding from major foundations. I understood how to tell stories that made funders care, how to present data that proved impact, how to build relationships that led to sustained support. By David's senior year, I'd saved $67,000 for his college education. Not enough for Harvard, but enough for a good state school. Then David was accepted to the University of Washington with a full-ride academic scholarship. I cried when we got that letter. My baby, the child I'd raised alone, was going to college without drowning in debt. "You did this, Mom," David said, hugging me in our small kitchen. "Everything you sacrificed. This is because of you." "No, baby," I told him. "This is because of you." During David's college years, I kept climbing. By the time he graduated in 2012, I'd become Director of Development at Hearts and Hope Foundation. I was overseeing all fundraising efforts, managing a team of 5, bringing in millions of dollars in grants and donations. The executive director, Dorothy Hayes, A black woman who'd built Hearts and Hope from nothing took me under her wing. She taught me about major donor cultivation, about board management, about strategic planning that transforms small organizations into sustainable institutions. "You have a gift," Mary Dorothy told me one day over coffee at our favorite cafe on 23rd Avenue. "You understand people. You understand money. But most importantly, you understand mission. That combination is rare." When Dorothy retired in 2014, the board asked me to apply for her position. Executive Director of Hearts and Hope Foundation. Me, the single mother who'd started as an administrative assistant 16 years earlier. I was terrified. But I applied. And I got it. That was 12 years ago. I was 51 years old, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't have to worry about money anymore. My salary jumped to $125,000. I could breathe. I could start thinking about my own future instead of just surviving the present. Under my leadership, Hearts and Hope grew. We expanded our programs from 3 to 15. We increased our annual budget from $2 million to $25 million. We opened 3 new community centers in underserved neighborhoods, places where families could get help without judgment, without shame, without barriers. We created the Children's Literacy Initiative, a program that put books in the hands of kids who'd never owned a single one. We provided tutors, reading programs, mobile libraries. We helped thousands of families move from crisis to stability. I poured everything into that organization. It wasn't just my job. It was my purpose. My way of making sense of all the hard years. My way of ensuring that other single mothers, other struggling families wouldn't have to face what I'd faced alone. The board loved me. The donors loved me. The families we served loved me. But David didn't really understand it. To him, I was just Mom. The woman who made his favorite meals when he came home to visit. The woman who asked too many questions about his life. The woman who was always there, constant as Seattle rain, unexciting as furniture. He knew I worked at a nonprofit. He knew I helped people, but he never asked for details. Never asked what exactly I did or how the organization worked or what my role entailed. And I never pushed the information on him. I wanted David to be proud of his own accomplishments, not to rely on his mother's success or connections. I wanted him to make his own way in the world. Maybe that was my first mistake. After college, David got a job at a tech startup. Nothing fancy, $65,000 a year doing marketing for a company that made productivity software. But it was decent money for a 24-year-old, and he was proud. He got his own apartment in Capitol Hill, his own car, his own life. I was so proud I could barely contain it. Then, in 2018, he met Ashley Richardson. Ashley came from money. Old Seattle money. The kind of family that's had wealth for so many generations, they don't even think about it anymore. It's just the air they breathe. Her father, Robert Richardson, owned Richardson Industries, a manufacturing empire worth on paper hundreds of millions of dollars. Her mother, Patricia Morrison, Richardson came from the Morrison family, another wealthy Seattle dynasty. When David first told me about Ashley, his voice changed, got higher, younger, like he was a teenager with his first crush instead of a 26-year-old man. "She's incredible, Mom," he said over dinner at my house one Sunday. I'd made pot roast his favorite. "She's beautiful. She's smart. She went to Stanford. Her family is really well connected." "She sounds lovely," I said, smiling. "When do I get to meet her?" David hesitated. Just for a second. But I noticed. Mothers always notice. "Soon," he said. "I just want to make sure we're serious first." That hesitation should have warned me, but I was too happy for David to pay attention to warning signs. 6 months later, in November 2018, he brought Ashley to Sunday dinner. She was beautiful. I'll give her that. Blonde hair styled in loose waves, a cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Perfect makeup, perfect posture. The kind of polished elegance that comes from expensive schools and cotillion classes and summers in the Hamptons. "Mrs. Sullivan," she said, shaking my hand with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "David has told me so much about you." "Call me Mary, please," I said. Come in, dinner's almost ready." We sat in my small dining room, the table I'd bought at a yard sale 30 years ago, the chairs I'd refinished myself when David was in middle school, the simple white dishes from Target. Ashley looked around with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not disgust exactly. More like confusion. like she was trying to understand how people lived in spaces this small, with furniture this old, with decorations this simple. "This is cozy," she said finally. "Very homey." The way she said homey made it sound like an insult. During dinner, I asked Ashley about herself, about her work, her family, her interests. She worked in her father's company, she said. Something in marketing. She was very busy, very important. The family was planning a big charity gala for the spring. "You should come, Mrs. Sullivan," she said, cutting her pot roast into precise tiny pieces. "It's going to be quite an event. 500 guests. We're raising money for children's literacy programs." "That sounds wonderful," I said, smiling. "I'd love to attend." Ashley's smile was sharp. "Of course, tickets are $5,000 per person, but I'm sure David can figure something out." $5,000, said so casually, like it was the price of a movie ticket instead of more than some families made in 2 months. I glanced at David. He was looking at his plate. Not at me, not at Ashley, just at his pot roast like it held the secrets of the universe. "I'll let you know," I said quietly. After dinner, I was washing dishes when Ashley came into the kitchen. David had stepped outside to take a call. "Mrs. Sullivan," she said, leaning against my counter with her perfect manicured nails and her Cartier watch. "Can I be honest with you?" "Of course," I said, my hands in warm, soapy water. "David is wonderful, really wonderful, but he's told me about your situation. Growing up without much, his father leaving, you working multiple jobs." I kept washing dishes, waiting. "I just want you to know," Ashley continued, "that David doesn't have to live like that anymore. He's with me now. My family can provide things, opportunities, a better life." I turned to look at her. "David already has a good life. He's built it himself. With your help, though, right?" Ashley's smile was sharp. "David told me how much you gave him, how you paid for everything. That's very generous." She picked up a wine glass, examined it like she was checking for spots. "But now he needs to move forward, stand on his own, without depending on you quite so much." The words landed like small knives, polite, precise, painful. "I want what's best for David," I said carefully. "I always have." "Of course you do. You're his mother." Ashley put the glass down. "I just think it's important that he establishes independence, from his past, from the way he grew up. My family has certain expectations, certain standards." She smiled at me again. "I'm sure you understand." I understood perfectly. I understood that Ashley Richardson thought my son had come from nothing, that she was doing him a favor by loving him, that I was an embarrassment he needed to overcome. But I smiled back and said, "I just want David to be happy." "Good," Ashley said. "Then we agree." 3 months later, in February 2019, David called to tell me they were engaged. I cried. Happy tears, I thought at the time. "The wedding's going to be in June," David said. His voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to ask for something difficult. "At the Richardson estate. It's going to be pretty big. Ashley's family has certain traditions." "Of course," I said. "Do you need any help with planning?" A pause. "Actually, Mom, Ashley's mother, is handling most of it. She's very particular about these things." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "I see. But there's something else," David continued. "Ashley's family has a tradition that both families contribute to the wedding costs. Split everything 50-50. Her parents are covering the venue and catering. I was hoping you could cover the flowers and music." "How much are we talking about?" I asked quietly. "Around $75,000. $75,000. For flowers and music. More than I'd paid for my entire house." But I looked at the calendar on my wall at the photo of David as a little boy that I kept pinned there, and I thought about all the sacrifices I'd already made. What was one more? "Let me think about it," I said. That night I sat in my home office and looked at my financial statements, at my savings, at the retirement account I'd been building for 20 years. I could afford $75,000. Technically, it would take most of my liquid savings, but I could do it. For David, for his happiness, for his future. I called him the next day and said yes. The wedding planning was controlled entirely by Patricia Richardson. I was given a checklist of what I needed to pay for. Flowers, $35,000 orchids and roses all white. String quartet, $15,000. Reception band $25,000. Every time I suggested something less expensive, Patricia would smile that same smile Ashley had and say, "Oh, Mary, this is what we do. This is our standard." Their standard, not mine. I wrote the checks, every single one, and I told myself it was fine. It was just money. David's happiness was worth more than any amount of money. The invitation to the Richardson Family Charity Gala arrived in April. Thick cardstock with gold embossing. "You are cordially invited to attend the Richardson Industries Annual Charity Gala benefiting the Children's Literacy Initiative, Saturday, May 18, 2019. The grand atrium black tie required." And at the bottom in smaller print in honor of David Sullivan, event chair. David was chairing his soon-to-be family's charity event. My son, the man I'd raised, and I was finding out from an invitation. Not from him. I called him immediately. "Jake David Honey, I got the invitation to the gala." "Oh yeah," he sounded distracted. "Ashley's father asked me to chair it this year. It's kind of a big deal. Good for my career." "That's wonderful. I'm proud of you." "Thanks, Mom. Hey, I have to go. Meeting in 5 minutes. I'll call you later." He didn't call later. The weeks before the wedding blurred together. David was busy with wedding planning and work and Richardson family events. I barely saw him. When we did talk, it was quick phone calls about logistics, the rehearsal dinner schedule, the seating chart, the timeline for photos. He never asked how I was doing, never asked about my work, never asked if I needed help with anything. It was like I'd become a function rather than a person. Mother of the groom. Check the box. Move on. The charity gala was scheduled for 3 weeks before the wedding. I bought a dress for it, silver elegant but simple $89 from Macy's. I wanted to look appropriate for David's big night. I wanted to make him proud. I arrived at the Grand Atrium at 7:00 p.m. on May 18, 2019. The venue was stunning. High ceilings with crystal chandeliers. Marble floors that reflected the lights like water. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Tables draped in white linens with centerpieces of white roses and orchids. The same flowers I'd paid $35,000 for the wedding. This was wealth. Real wealth. The kind I'd spent my career working around but never quite belonging to. I found my table assignment at the entrance table 47. Not the family table where the Richardsons sat. Not even close to the head tables. Table 47 was in the back near the kitchen doors with people I'd never met. A couple from California who didn't know anyone. An elderly woman who spent the whole evening talking about her cats. But I smiled. I made polite conversation. I complimented the flowers that I'd indirectly helped fund through Hearts and Hope's partnership with Richardson Industries, though nobody here knew that. I was determined to be the perfect mother of the groom. Supportive. Unobtrusive. Grateful to be included. The program began after dinner. Robert Richardson spoke first, a polished speech about the importance of literacy, about giving back, about family legacy. "And this year," he said, smiling broadly, "I'm proud to announce that my future son-in-law, David Sullivan, has taken on the role of event chair. David has brought fresh energy and new ideas to our annual gala." The room erupted in applause. I clapped until my hands hurt my heart, swelling with pride. That was my son. My beautiful, accomplished son. David stood and gave his speech. He talked about the importance of children's literacy, about how reading changed lives, about how education was the key to breaking cycles of poverty. He talked about everything I'd taught him, everything I'd shown him through my own life, everything I'd sacrificed so he could have the education that opened these doors. But he didn't mention me, not once. He thanked Ashley's parents for their support. He thanked Ashley for her inspiration. He thanked the committee members and the volunteers and the donors. But his own mother, sitting in the back of the room at table 47, might as well have been invisible. I told myself it didn't matter. The evening wasn't about me. It was about the cause, about David's success, about his future. After the speeches, people started mingling. The drinks flowed. A jazz quartet played. I stood near the silent auction tables looking at the items up for bid. Vacation packages to Tuscany, original artwork, diamond jewelry, a weekend at someone's San Juan Islands estate. The kind of things that existed in a world so far from where I'd come from that they barely seemed real. I was writing a bid on a landscape painting, a beautiful piece with blues and greens, mountains and sky, when I heard Ashley's voice behind me. I turned, thinking maybe she was coming to thank me for attending, to include me in the celebration, to acknowledge that I was part of this family now. But she wasn't talking to me. She was talking about me. Ashley was standing about 15 feet away with a group of 6 or 7 women, all holding champagne flutes, all dressed in designer gowns that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. I recognized a few of them from the engagement party, Ashley's college friends from Stanford women whose family names appeared on buildings and museum wings. "That's her," Ashley was saying, her voice loud enough to carry over the music. "That's the one I've been telling you about." One of her friends, a blonde in a red dress, leaned in. "Oh God, this is David's mother." "The one and only," Ashley said, taking a sip of champagne. "I should have walked away. Should have gone to the bathroom or back to table 47 or outside for some air." But something kept me frozen in place. Some instinct that told me I needed to hear this, needed to witness it. "She's been absolutely insufferable since the engagement," Ashley continued, "calling constantly, questioning every decision we make, acting like she has some right to be involved in everything." The woman in red laughed. "Oh God, the clingy mother-in-law type. How exhausting." "Exhausting is exactly the word," Ashley agreed. "And she's so, I don't know how to say this, politely low class about everything." The group leaned in, hungry for gossip. "What do you mean?" another woman asked. "She showed up to our engagement party in a dress from Macy's," Ashley said, and they all laughed like this was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. "Can you imagine Macy's?" "What does she even do?" the blonde in red asked. "Some nonprofit job," Ashley said with a dismissive wave. "She works with poor people or something. David's very vague about it. I think he's embarrassed, honestly." "Can you blame him?" another woman chimed in. "Going from that to your family must be quite the adjustment." "It is," Ashley said. "But David is adapting beautifully. He's learning, growing, leaving all that behind." All that. She meant me. She meant David's childhood. She meant everything that made him who he was. My hands tightened on the auction paddle I was still holding. The room felt very hot suddenly, very bright. "Honestly," Ashley said, and now her voice dropped to that particular stage whisper that ensures everyone nearby can hear perfectly, "the woman is a big fool. She thinks she's being helpful, but she's just making everything harder. We can't wait until the wedding is over so we can set some serious boundaries." And then she pointed at me, her champagne glass tilted in my direction. Her smile was bright and cruel and absolutely certain of itself. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced louder now, loud enough for everyone in our section to hear, "I'd like you to meet the big fool we've been talking about." Laughter rippled through the group. Not polite chuckles. Real laughter. I stood there, my silver dress from Macy's, my $89 dress, and I felt 300 years of being underestimated settle onto my shoulders like a familiar weight. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I didn't cause a scene. I looked at Ashley Richardson, this young woman who thought she knew everything about the world because she'd been born into wealth, and I smiled. Then I looked across the room for David. He was standing near the bar talking to some business associates, but his shoulders were tense. His head turned slightly toward us, then away again. He'd heard. I could tell by the way he stood by the rigid set of his spine. My son had heard his fiancée call his mother a fool in front of 300 people, and he was pretending he hadn't. That's when I felt it. Not my heart breaking that would come later in the quiet of my own home. This was something else. Something harder. Something like steel forming in my chest. I turned back to the auction table and calmly wrote my bid on the landscape painting. $5,000. My handwriting was steady. Behind me, Ashley's laughter continued. "Wait." The voice cut through the laughter like a knife through silk. Robert Richardson was standing at the bar about 10 feet away, close enough to have heard everything. His champagne glass had stopped halfway to his lips. The color was draining from his face like someone had pulled a plug. He was staring at me. Really staring. Like he was seeing me for the first time. "Wait," he said again, his voice strange now, tight. "Aren't you Mary Sullivan?" The laughter stopped. Ashley's smile faltered. "Dad, what's wrong?" But Robert wasn't looking at his daughter. He was looking at me with an expression I recognized. I'd seen it on other people's faces over the years. The moment they realized they'd made a terrible, irreversible mistake. "Mary Sullivan," he repeated slowly, "of Hearts and Hope Foundation." I didn't say anything, just looked at him steadily. The group of women had gone quiet. Ashley's champagne glass lowered. Robert swallowed hard. You're the executive director. It wasn't a question. I set down my auction paddle. Yes, I said simply. I am. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the jazz quartet seemed to fade away. Beverly Ashley, Robert said, using his daughter's formal name, which he never did. His voice was shaking slightly. What did you just call this woman? Ashley's face had gone pale under her perfect makeup. Dad, I don't understand what— The Children's Literacy Initiative. Robert interrupted, his eyes never leaving my face. The charity we're fundraising for tonight. Do you know who runs it? Ashley shook her head mutely. Hearts and Hope Foundation runs it, Robert said. Each word came out carefully, precisely like he was defusing a bomb. It's been one of their core programs for 8 years. He gestured at me and I saw his hand was trembling. Mrs. Sullivan oversees all of it. The curriculum development, the volunteer coordination, the distribution of books and resources to over 47 schools across King County. Everything. The women in Ashley's group were staring at me now. Their expressions had changed from amused to uncertain to horrified. Every book we distribute, Robert continued, his voice getting louder now, every tutoring session we provide, every reading program we implement in underserved communities, it all goes through Mrs. Sullivan's organization. He looked at Ashley, really looked at her, and I saw something break in his face. We write checks, Ashley. She does the actual work. She's been doing it for 12 years. One of Ashley's friends, the blonde in red, took a step back. Then another. Patricia Richardson appeared beside her husband like a ghost materializing. She'd been smiling when she walked over, making her rounds, being gracious. But the smile died the second she saw Robert's face. Robert, she whispered. What's happening? Mary Sullivan, Robert said. Just those 2 words, like they explained the universe. And to Patricia, apparently they did. Her face went completely white. All the expensive makeup and carefully applied blush couldn't hide the sudden draining of color. Her hand flew to her throat, fingers clutching at her diamond necklace. Oh my God, Patricia whispered. Robert, tell me you didn't know. Tell me Ashley didn't know. I didn't know, Robert said quickly. Ashley never mentioned. David never said anything. I had no idea Mrs. Sullivan was David's mother. He looked at me with desperate eyes. In all our files, your son is listed as David Sullivan. You're listed everywhere on the board documents. The donor lists the partnership agreements as Mary Sullivan. I never made the connection. I never even thought to ask. No, I said gently. My voice was calm, so calm it surprised even me. You wouldn't have made the connection. I've always used my full name professionally. I built my career as Mary Sullivan. It helped me create something that was mine, separate from everything else. I paused. Let the words land. And David apparently didn't think my work was relevant enough to mention to his future wife and her family. Ashley found her voice. It came out shrill, panicked. Daddy, this doesn't change anything. She's still— But she couldn't finish the sentence. Still what? Still low class, still from Macy's, still a fool. Do you have any idea what you've just done? Robert's voice was sharp now, harder than I'd ever heard him speak, even in board meetings. I was making a joke, Ashley said, but her voice was smaller now, uncertain. That's all, Daddy. Just a joke among friends. A joke. Robert's face had gone from pale to red. You think insulting someone is funny? You think calling someone a fool in front of 300 people is humor? He was breathing hard now. Ashley, do you understand who this woman is? Do you have any concept of what you've just done? He turned to gesture at the room around us, at the crystal chandeliers and the marble floors and the white roses in their expensive crystal vases, at the silent auction tables and the champagne fountains and the beautifully dressed people all pretending not to stare at us. This event tonight, Robert said, his voice tight. This charity gala we've spent 6 months planning. This fundraiser for the Children's Literacy Initiative that you've been so proud of. Do you know who our primary partner is? Ashley shook her head. Hearts and Hope Foundation, Robert said. The organization that Mrs. Sullivan has been running as executive director for the past 12 years. But Ashley started. Richardson Industries Foundation pledged $5 million to the Children's Literacy Initiative 3 years ago, Robert interrupted. Paid out annually, $1 million per year. He looked at me and I saw understanding dawning in his eyes. fear too. But Mrs. Sullivan's organization matches every corporate donation dollar for dollar, which means, I said quietly, Hearts and Hope has invested $10 million in the literacy program you're fundraising for tonight. The number hung in the air like smoke. $10 million. From the woman Ashley had just called a fool. But that's not all, Robert said, and now his voice was shaking. Is it Mrs. Sullivan? I knew where this was going. I'd been planning this moment for months. The surprise, the announcement during David's speech, the joy on his face when I stood up and revealed my donation. But that fantasy was ashes now. Mrs. Sullivan, Robert continued, I reviewed our donor list this afternoon. There was an anonymous donation listed, $30 million, the largest single donation in the history of the Children's Literacy Initiative. He looked at me with something like awe and terror mixed together. That was you, wasn't it, the anonymous donor? I'd sold my commercial property in February, a building in the university district that I'd bought 15 years ago as an investment back when I was still development coordinator. I'd paid $180,000 for it in 2004. Last year, a developer had offered me $30 million. I'd accepted, and I'd given every penny to Hearts and Hope Foundation, to the organization I'd spent my life building, to the work that had saved me and so many others, to the literacy program that put books in the hands of children who looked like I did when I was young. Black, brown, poor, overlooked, underestimated. I'd planned to announce it tonight, during David's moment in the spotlight, to surprise him, to show him how proud I was of his work, to show everyone here that the mother who raised this accomplished young man believed in him, believed in this cause, believed in breaking the cycles that trapped families in poverty. I'd written a speech, talked about why literacy mattered, about why investing in children's futures was the most important work any of us could do, about learning those values from my own struggle. But I wasn't going to give that speech now. Yes, I said simply. That was me. The silence was deafening. Ashley made a sound something between a gasp and a sob. $30 million. The number echoed through the crowd. I could see it on their faces. The wealthy donors and business associates and society figures who'd been laughing at Ashley's jokes 60 seconds ago, now realizing exactly who they'd been laughing at. Robert made a sound in his throat, something between a laugh and a sob. Mrs. Sullivan, he said. We had no idea. If you'd known, I interrupted gently, you would have treated me differently. You would have seated me at the head table. You would have acknowledged my contributions. You would have introduced me to everyone as someone important. I looked around at their faces. Robert, Patricia, Ashley, the friends who'd been laughing. But you didn't know. So you seated me at table 47 near the kitchen doors. You made assumptions based on my department store address and my son's carefully constructed lies about where he came from. David, my voice wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, just calm and clear and steady. Could you come here, please? I watched my son walk toward us through the silent crowd. Every step looked like it cost him something, like he was walking through water, through concrete, through his own worst nightmare made real. When he reached our circle, he couldn't meet my eyes. Mom, he said quietly, I can explain. Can you? The words came out softer than I expected, almost gentle. Can you explain why your fiancé thinks I'm a fool? Why she believes I work at some small nonprofit that barely matters? Why you never mentioned that your mother runs Hearts and Hope Foundation? David opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. You thought what, baby? I asked. My voice was still gentle, still calm, but there was steel underneath now. You thought my work wasn't impressive enough. You thought my success would make yours look smaller by comparison. No, Mom, that's not. Then what is it? I interrupted. Because I need to understand David. I really need to understand how we got to a place where you're ashamed of me, where you hide what I do, where you minimize 30 years of work and achievement and impact, where you let your fiancé call me a fool in front of 300 people and you don't say a single word to defend me. Tears were streaming down David's face now. I'm so sorry, Mom, he said, his voice breaking. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen, I said. It happened because you made choices. You chose to lie about who I am. You chose to erase my accomplishments. You chose to let the woman you're going to marry believe that your mother is someone to pity or dismiss. I pulled the cream envelope from my clutch, the one with my name embossed on the back, the speech I'd written, the announcement I'd planned. I came here tonight to surprise you, I said, holding it up so everyone could see, to announce my donation during your big moment, to show you how proud I am of the work you're doing, how much I believe in you. I looked at the envelope, at all the words I'd written, all the love I'd poured onto those pages. I was going to talk about why literacy matters, why breaking cycles of poverty matters, why investing in children's futures is the most important work any of us can do. I was going to tell everyone here tonight that you learned those values from me, that everything you are, everything you care about came from the woman who raised you. David made a sound like a wounded animal. But I don't think I'll be giving that speech, I said. I handed the envelope to Robert. This is the formal donation documentation. $30 million to Hearts and Hope Foundation earmarked specifically for the Children's Literacy Initiative. The money is already transferred. The gift is complete. The board approved it last month. It's done. Robert took the envelope with hands that were visibly shaking. Mrs. Sullivan, he whispered. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, I said. The money isn't for you. It's not even really for David. It's for the children. The kids who come to our centers unable to read and leave with a love of books. The families who need help and support and resources. That's who the money is for. I took a breath. But I won't be making any public announcements tonight. I won't be standing at that podium during the program. I won't be taking credit or accepting thanks or being honored in any way. Ashley made a small sound, a gasp or a sob. And I won't be attending the wedding in 3 weeks, I added quietly. The words fell like stones into still water. Mom, no, David gasped. Please, please don't do this. I'm not doing this, David, I said. My voice was steady, calm, final. You did this. You did this when you chose to hide who I am. When you chose to let someone mock me rather than defend me. When you chose to protect your pride instead of your mother's dignity. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Memorized his face in this moment. I will always love you, I said softly. You're my son. Nothing changes that. I paused. But I don't like who you've become. And until you figure out who you want to be, someone who values substance over status, someone who honors where he came from, someone who treats people with respect regardless of their wealth or their race or their background, I think we need some distance. I picked up my clutch, straightened my shoulders. I wish you all a lovely evening, I said. And then I walked away, through the silent crowd that parted before me like water, past the auction tables with their vacation packages and artwork, past the champagne fountains that had gone still, past the white roses in their crystal vases. I walked across that marble floor with my head high and my heart breaking into 1,000 sharp pieces. Behind me, I heard Ashley's voice rising in panic. Daddy, fix this. You have to fix this. Call her back. But some things can't be fixed. Some things once broken show you exactly what was wrong all along. I pushed through the doors of the grand atrium and stepped out into the cool Seattle night. And for the first time in hours, I could breathe. I didn't cry on the drive home. I'd learned a long time ago, back when David was little, and I was working 2 jobs and driving between them in the middle of the night, that crying while driving is dangerous. You can't see the road properly. Your hands shake. Your judgment gets clouded. So I kept my eyes forward, watching the taillights of the cars ahead of me blur and refocus. I kept my hands steady on the wheel, gripping tight enough that my knuckles went white. And I breathed carefully, slowly through the tightness in my chest that felt like someone had wrapped steel bands around my rib cage. The drive from downtown Seattle to my neighborhood took 23 minutes. I counted every single one of them. When I pulled into my driveway at 847 Maple Street, I sat in the car for a long moment. Just sat there in the darkness, engine ticking as it cooled, looking at my small house with its porch light glowing yellow and warm. This was home. This place I'd bought 38 years ago when I was young and newly married and full of dreams. This place where I'd raised my son alone. This place where every corner held memories of who we'd been and who I'd thought we'd become. I finally got out of the car and walked up the 3 steps to my front door. Inside, I kicked off my silver heels and left them lying in the entryway. Didn't even bother putting them away properly. I went straight to my home office, the room that used to be David's nursery, where I'd rocked him at 3 a.m. when he wouldn't sleep. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out the bottle of Maker's Mark I kept there for the hardest days. I poured 2 fingers into a glass. Neat. No ice. Just the burn of it going down. I sat at my desk and looked at the photos on the wall. My whole life in frames. David as a baby. David on his first day of kindergarten. David at his graduations. A whole wall of memories. I messed up, I said out loud to the empty room. I gave him everything and taught him nothing about what it costs. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. David, Ashley, Robert, Patricia. Text messages lighting up the screen. Voicemails piling up faster than I could ignore them. Mom, please call me back, please. Mrs. Sullivan, I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. Mary, we need to talk about what happened. Please, Mom, please don't do this. I watched the messages appear one after another, urgent and desperate and pleading. Then I turned my phone face down on the desk and took another sip of whiskey. The calls continued through the weekend. Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday morning. David called 17 times. His voicemails got longer each time, more desperate, more broken. Ashley called 12 times. Her messages were panicked, high-pitched, almost hysterical about the wedding, about her family, about what people would think. Robert left 6 formal messages like he was leaving voicemails for a business associate, rather than his future son-in-law's mother. Patricia left 9 messages that started apologetic, and gradually became more urgent, more insistent that we discuss this like adults. I didn't answer any of them. On Sunday afternoon, I turned my phone completely off. The silence was immediate. Complete, blessed. I made myself tea, sat in my garden, pulled weeds, deadheaded the roses, let my hands get dirty and my mind go quiet. Monday morning I went to work like usual. I got up at 6, made coffee, showered, put on my navy suit and pearl earrings. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw the executive director of Hearts and Hope Foundation looking back. Not someone's mother, not someone's disappointment, just myself. I arrived at the office at 7:30 a.m. early like always. I liked having the building to myself for an hour before everyone else arrived. Michelle, my assistant, arrived at 8:30. She took one look at my face and disappeared. 3 minutes later, she was back with coffee. Black 2 sugars, exactly how I liked it. Are you okay? She asked gently. Not yet, I said honestly. But I will be. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. I'd been planning this meeting for months. The formal announcement of my donation, the unveiling of the expansion plans, the vision for what $30 million could accomplish. I walked into that boardroom at exactly 10 a.m. professional and composed. The board members were already seated. 12 people who dedicated their time and expertise to making Hearts and Hope successful. Dorothy Hayes, my mentor now board chair, James Patterson, Sarah Chen, Robert Dawson. People who understood poverty and social services and the difference between charity and systemic change. Good morning, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. Thank you all for coming. We have significant news to discuss today. I walked them through everything. The $30 million donation, where it came from the sale of my commercial property at 457 University Way, where it would go expanded literacy programs, 3 new community centers in Rainier Valley White Center and South Park. Mobile learning labs, college scholarships for program graduates. The board members were stunned, then thrilled, then immediately strategic, already thinking about implementation timelines and program development. This is transformative, Mary, Dorothy said. She was sitting to my right, her eyes bright with tears. This changes everything for the families we serve. That's the goal, I said simply. We spent 2 hours discussing details. Budget allocations, hiring timelines, facility locations, program designs, all the practical necessary work of turning money into impact. It felt good, focusing on something that mattered, something bigger than my personal pain. After the meeting, Dorothy asked me to stay behind. When the door closed and we were alone, she turned to me. What happened at the Richardson Gala? I looked at her in surprise. How did you know something happened? Robert Richardson called me Saturday morning, she said quietly. He was almost incoherent, something about a terrible misunderstanding, something about your son. He wouldn't give me details, but he was clearly upset. So I told her everything. Beverly's Ashley's comment, the public humiliation, the revelation about who I was, David's lies and silence, my decision to walk away, my decision to skip the wedding. Dorothy listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm so sorry," she said. "That must have been devastating." "It was," I admitted. "It still is." "But you did the right thing," Dorothy said firmly. "Setting boundaries, demanding respect, walking away from a situation that required you to diminish yourself. That takes real courage, Mary, especially with family." "It doesn't feel courageous," I said. "It feels like failure." "No," Dorothy said sharply. "You succeeded as a mother. You raised a son who's intelligent and capable and successful. You gave him every opportunity. But somewhere along the way, he lost sight of his values. That's not your failure. That's his learning opportunity." Friday evening, exactly 1 week after the gala, I was in my kitchen making dinner, just pasta with vegetables, the meal I used to make for David when he was little, when my doorbell rang. Mom, please. I know you're home. Your car is in the driveway. Please just let me in." David's voice. I turned off the stove and walked to the front door. When I opened it, I barely recognized him. Dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed, clothes wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept in 7 days. "Come in," I said quietly. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, not touching, not close. "I've spent the whole week trying to figure out what to say." David began, his hands twisting together. "But there aren't any words to fix this, are there?" "No," I said simply. "There aren't." He nodded like he'd expected that answer. "I was ashamed," he said, his voice so quiet I almost couldn't hear him. "Not of you. God, Mom, never of you. But of myself, of where I came from, of what I didn't have." He looked up at me. His eyes were red-rimmed, swollen from crying. "Ashley's family has so much money, so much wealth and status and connections, and I'm just the son of a single black mother who worked her way up from nothing." From nothing, the words came out sharper than I intended. "David, I didn't come from nothing. I came from hard work and sacrifice and determination. That's not nothing. That's everything." "I know," he said quickly. "I know that now. I've always known that, really. But when I met Ashley, when I saw her world, I wanted so badly to belong in it, to be worthy of her, to be someone she could be proud of." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "So I minimized where I came from. I made it sound smaller than it was, less impressive. I told Ashley you worked at a small nonprofit, that you helped poor people. I made it sound like you were barely getting by, like you struggled financially, like you sometimes needed help from me." Each word was a small knife. "Why?" I asked. "Why would you do that?" "Because it made me look better," David said, tears streaming down his face now. "If I came from hardship, then my own success looked bigger, more impressive. If you were struggling, then my help looked more generous, more noble." He was sobbing now, full ugly sobs that shook his whole body. "I turned your strength into my story of overcoming. I erased everything you actually are so I could look like something I'm not." He put his face in his hands. "And then when Ashley believed the lies I told her, when she treated you the way I taught her to treat you, I didn't defend you. I stood there and let my fiancé call you a fool in front of 300 people, because defending you would mean admitting I'd been lying all along. I sat there looking at my son, this man I'd raised, this person I'd loved more than my own life for 36 years. And I realized something. Love without accountability isn't really love. It's enabling." "David," I said quietly. He looked up at me. "I forgive you." His head snapped up like I'd slapped him. "What, I forgive you?" I repeated. "For lying, for being ashamed, for not defending me, all of it?" "You do?" His voice was filled with desperate, fragile hope. "Yes," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to normal. It doesn't mean I'm coming to your wedding. It doesn't mean we pretend this didn't happen, or that you didn't hurt me." The hope in his eyes dimmed. "What does it mean?" he asked. "It means I understand that you made mistakes, that you're human, that you got caught up in wanting to belong somewhere and lost sight of where you actually came from." I paused. "It means I love you enough to forgive you. but it also means you need to figure out who you want to be. How? David asked. How do I do that? Therapy, I said. Real therapy with someone who specializes in family dynamics and identity issues and shame. You need to understand why you felt embarrassed about where you came from, why you thought lying was easier than honesty, why status became more important than integrity. David nodded slowly. Okay, I'll find someone this week. And you need honest conversations with Ashley, I continued. About expectations, about values, about what kind of life you actually want to build together. Because if she can't respect where you came from, if she can't value what actually matters, then maybe you're not as compatible as you thought. She's been devastated, David said. She feels terrible about what she said. Good, I said. Not unkindly, just honestly. She should feel terrible. She should understand that words have consequences. Will you ever forgive her? David asked quietly. Maybe, I said. Someday, but not today. And not just because she asks nicely or cries or apologizes. She'll need to show me through actions over time that she's learned something, that she's grown. David stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby, I said. I always will. I paused. But love isn't enough. Respect matters. Honesty matters. How we treat people when we think nobody important is watching, that matters most of all. On Saturday, June 8, 2019, David and Ashley got married. I didn't attend. I spent that Saturday morning working in my garden, planting tomatoes in the vegetable bed, pulling weeds from around the roses, deadheading the flowers that had already bloomed. It was peaceful, quiet, exactly what I needed. Around 2 p.m., my phone started buzzing with photos. David and Ashley at the altar, the first dance, the cake cutting. They looked happy, beautiful, like every young couple at their wedding, full of hope and promise. I looked at each photo, really looked. Let myself feel the bittersweetness of missing this moment. Then I smiled a real smile because they did look happy. And maybe that was enough. I put my phone away and went back to my tomatoes. It's been 8 months since the gala. 8 months since I walked away from my son's wedding. People ask me if I regret my decision. The answer is no. David has been in therapy like I suggested. He calls me once a week now. Short calls, at first awkward and careful. But slowly, they've gotten longer, more honest, more real. I'm working on it, Mom, he told me last month. Trying to unlearn all the wrong things I taught myself. I'm proud of you for doing the work, baby, I said. Ashley has called too. She started volunteering at Hearts and Hope 3 months ago, working in our Rainier Valley Community Center, helping families navigate social services. I had no idea, she told me during one call in December. I had no idea what people go through, what you went through, how hard it is to survive when the system isn't built for you. Now you know, I said simply. Last week, David and Ashley invited me to dinner at their apartment. Not a big production, just the 3 of us. Spaghetti with homemade sauce, garlic bread, salad from a bag. We're learning to cook, David said, slightly embarrassed by the simple meal. This is perfect, I said, and I meant it. We talked for hours that night, about David's therapy, about Ashley's volunteer work, about their marriage, which they admitted was harder than they expected. We're learning who we actually are, Ashley said, not who our families wanted us to be. It's painful sometimes. Growth usually is, I said. Before I left, Ashley asked if she could hug me. I said yes. She held on tight and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on us." I didn't give up, I corrected gently. I stepped back. There's a difference. Every Friday I have lunch with Carmen Rodriguez at our Rainier Valley Community Center. We sit together after her daughter Rosa's tutoring session. Rosa is 7 years old. 3 months ago she couldn't read. She was about to be held back in 2nd grade. Her mother was working 3 jobs and couldn't afford tutoring. Now Rosa comes to our center 3 times a week. She works with a volunteer tutor named Patricia Richardson, Ashley's mother, who started volunteering 2 months ago, sitting beside her daughter at the same table. Rosa is discovering that reading isn't scary. It's magical. She's found books about space and dinosaurs and girls who have adventures. She's going to pass 2nd grade. She's going to keep learning. She's going to have opportunities her mother never had. Last Friday, Carmen asked me why I do this work, why I gave so much money. Why I spend my life helping families like hers. I thought about it for a moment. Then I told her the truth. Because 36 years ago I was you, I said, working multiple jobs, raising a child alone, terrified I wasn't enough. Carmen's eyes filled with tears. And now look at you. Look at what you became. Yes, I said. Look at what I became. Not despite the struggle, but because of it. The hard years taught me who I was, what I was capable of, what really mattered. I looked through the window at Rosa bent over a book, her finger tracing the words, her face lit with concentration. Where you start doesn't determine where you end up, I said. That's the truth I've learned. I started in a small house with a broken marriage and a mountain of fear. I became someone who built an organization that serves thousands of families, who gave $30 million to continue that work, who learned to set boundaries and demand respect and walk away from situations that required her to be less than she was. I became someone who knows her worth. And that knowledge, hard-won, painful, absolutely essential, is the greatest gift I can pass on. Not just to David, though I hope he's learning it too, but to Rosa, to Carmen, to all the families who walk through our doors looking for help and finding dignity instead. To you wherever you are, whatever you're facing. You are not a fool. You are not less than. You are not defined by other people's limited understanding of who you are. You are exactly who you need to be right now in this moment, with all your struggles and strengths and imperfect, beautiful humanity. Don't let anyone make you forget that. Not even especially not the people who are supposed to love you most. I'm Mary Elizabeth Sullivan. I'm 63 years old, and I know my worth. The end. Part 3, word count 2,015 words. Total story, word count 6,096 words. Ed. This completes the full story of The $30 Million Fool, a story about dignity, boundaries, and knowing your worth at any age.